Thank you to Paula Garcia for sharing her community's story through the largest fire in state history. And now those flooding concerns, got to worry about that too. Let's welcome back our Line Opinion panelists for one final discussion this week. The Attorney General's office has opened an investigation into a police shooting in Chaves County. It happened March 22nd. Here's how it went down. Deputies were called to a dairy where 34-year-old David Aguilera was apparently trying to steal tractors. Deputies tried to subdue him with a taser. They eventually got him into the back of the patrol vehicle, but he slipped free of the handcuffs and climbed into the driver's seat of the vehicle. In police body cam footage, deputies can be heard ordering him to get out of the car. Mr. Aguilera apologizes but refuses. A deputy then opens fire when the vehicle appears to roll forward, and Mr. Aguilera died from his wounds. Let's start broadly here, Laura. As an attorney, what are your reactions to this case when you hear this? Again, the details are just what's reported here, but your initial gut reaction, I'm curious.
Well, I mean, I think anytime there's a police-involved shooting, it is, it's terrible. It's terrible for the family of the victim. In that case, it's terrible for the officers that are involved. It's never their first, I think, desire to open fire on anybody. So it's important to take a step back and make sure that there is an impartial third party doing an investigation. So in this case, I think it's important to point out that the local district attorney in Chaves County actually asked the attorney general to step in and do the investigation because there was a conflict of interest. She felt there was a conflict of interest there. And I think it's important that that district attorneys do that when there is a potential conflict of interest in investigating law enforcement. That way you get an impartial third party to come in and actually look at it, not have any kind of potential conflicts and issues that would cloud their judgment when it comes to reviewing the facts. So I think that, the early reports there's definitely confusion about why was the vehicle rolling, what exactly was occurring, was he handcuffed, was he restrained in some other way? All of these things are going to play into the fact pattern here and why it was necessary to open fire. I mean, I think it's important that, I don't think officers that's not ever their first approach. If they've got the right training, definitely. I mean, they're not going to just immediately go for their weapon unless there's some impending immediate threat. And so, if it turns out that there was a mistake made, a lapse in judgment that caused this, then obviously there's a need to have a lot more training when it comes to dealing with suspects in this case. Because, what he was being accused of, property damage, property crimes are still crimes, but there didn't appear to be an imminent threat to life at that point. But we don't know what occurred once he was in custody or what the facts were that led to this. But again, very, very sad situation, I think, for the county, and important for us to wait until there's an adequate investigation done.
Good points there. Andy, not the first controversial police shooting in Chaves County recently. Of course, deputies shot and killed an unarmed 25-year-old man in June of last year, and deputies say it appeared he was reaching for an object in his waistband, but there was none. And now the family of Oscar Nujera is suing commissioners for wrongful death. And I want to ask about this. Mental health appears to be a factor. His sister says he suffered from a traumatic brain injury and was not a threat to the deputies. Is there a thread here we're seeing when it comes to law enforcement and, of course, mental health issues and how training sort of factors into all these things?
Well, I think a big factor in that, obviously, that comes up a lot, but you throw in the mix a sort of smaller town police force, whether that's the county or the city or both. Not necessarily the best comparison, but I've noticed, when you go to public meetings in some of these smaller communities, it's pretty clear that they don't understand what the Open Meetings Act is or how to abide by it. Same thing with records requests, right? So you sort of live outside of the bubble of the metropolitan areas of New Mexico. And sometimes these things go unchecked, and maybe there's not somebody there saying, hey, we should really think forward on this and make sure that we have this crisis team. Because, maybe those small towns don't feel like they need that. And then, of course, something like this happens, and hindsight 2020.
Merritt, this one, I got to get into this. Another accusation highlighted in the lawsuit contends the Chaves County Sheriff, quote, enthusiastically hires known problem cops from other departments, end quotes. And the deputy in question had a previous complaint of excessive force. How concerning is that? Is that accusation on its own right there?
It's very concerning. And perhaps something that will come up in an upcoming sheriff's election. But building a little bit on Andy's point, that's the challenge we have with rural law enforcement. We have a limited pool of people willing to go into law enforcement in the state. And, you know, the highest salaries are offered by state police, then state corrections, then APD. Then I would guess Santa Fe, Las Cruces fall in there somewhere, maybe Los Alamos. And then everyone else, you know, is the rural department in roughly the same salary competing for the same workers. These officers are not well paid. The demands are high because there's the smaller a force you have, the more shifts, the fewer days off, the more coverage you have to provide. The stress is higher, the pay is less, the training is less. There simply are not the resources for things you would expect out of APD, for things you would expect out of Las Cruces, the things that the state police are able to do. So to Andy's point, there's not just a lower level of sophistication, there's simply fewer resources to go around.
Fair enough.
So they will not have had the resiliency training. They will not have had the training to deal with mental health issues. And there's more overtime. There are fewer days off. And then you have perhaps a culture, maybe a cowboy culture, where you've got a sheriff who says, we're the baddest guys in town. And if he's looking for people who aren't afraid to get into the fight, as it were, that only exacerbates the problem.
Laura, interestingly, May 2020, one of the officers now used to be with Roswell, now with this force we're talking about, Ricardo Delgado. He was investigated for dragging a handcuffed woman out of his police car by her hair, slamming her face into the pavement and kneeling on her neck for 3 minutes. And the Roswell Police Department at the time found the incident was, quote, a clear example of how officers should not conduct themselves. You know, is there any traction in this state about hiring problem officers, going from departments to departments? Have we had any movement on that in our state?
You mean movement to prevent that?
Yes, ma'am.
Not that I've seen in a concerted effort, but I'm sure that it's been talked about at the legislature by various parties. I think that it's important to recognize, though, you know, these rural communities are so different from what we see day to day in places like Albuquerque. And it's funny to hear Andy call it, you know, these small towns, because if you live in the southeast part of the state, Roswell's the biggest city down there.
Good point.
So, you know, it is not to us, it's a small town, but to people in Dexter, Hagerman, Artesia, Roswell's where you go, you know, to Sam's Club, because that's the only place in town or in that region you can go to Sam's Club. So, I mean, they've got some big, it may be smaller in population, but they have some big city problems in Roswell.
There you go.
There's definitely a crime issue. There's drug problems, there's property crime, there's violent crime. And so I think it's important for us to recognize there's a lot more resources that need to be pulled in for some of these rural communities. And training is a very important part of it. But it isn't just a small town issue. If you look at what was in the news not too long ago in Las Cruces, where there was an elderly lady who had dementia that was shot on her porch after not responding to officers' requests to put a knife down. The lady had dementia, and as somebody who, you know, had to deal with my mom who had dementia and had good days and bad days, as anybody who's dealt with that issue, you know, there has to be a lot more training for people that are in a crisis situation. And there's just so many limitations, not just in personnel, the way that that Merritt talked about, but just in terms of getting the right information into people's hands when they're on the front line.
In a timely manner.
A lot more funding needs to go into that.
That's right. Hey, thanks again to our line panel as always. This week, be sure to let us know what you think about any of the topics our line covered on our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram pages.